intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show. This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show.
YouTube, what is up? I'm your homeboy, old boy Josh, back at you, and today we're taking a look at the Aeronaut V2. Psst. Hey, he doesn't know it yet, but he's holding up the Aeronaut V1 box right now. When he realizes it later, he totally tries to cover up his mistake and switch it without you noticing. He's a total spaz, just FYI. From Aeronaut Vapes out in the UK. I'm excited. For those of you who are new to my channel, you may not know that the Aeronaut is pretty much my favorite RDA of all time. Ever since I first reviewed the Aeronaut, you've seen it on my channel multiple times. I talk about it all the freaking time. I've done multiple builds using the Aeronaut. He was on friggin' VP Live back when he had something like 2,000 subscribers just to talk about the Aeronaut. Not to talk about himself or his YouTube channel, mind you, but to talk about the Aeronaut specifically. That's saying something. I sing its praises every chance I get because it's an incredibly versatile, incredibly interesting, incredibly influential RDA at this point. The Goon, the Shuriken, the Pharaoh. I'm never far from my Aeronaut, ever. But now that the Aeronaut V2 has come along, well, that may change. Before we get into this review, I do want to take the time to remind you that we all have a part to play in the fight against Big Pharma, Big Tobacco, the FDA, and the deeming regulations that are looming over our heads. And that means that if you're on social media, you want to paint the best possible image of the vape community that you can. If you're a shop or a shop owner, remind your customers they need to get in this fight if they want to keep vaping, and follow all your calls to action, including those to support HR 2058 and the Cole Bishop Amendment. We all have a part to play. So the Aeronaut V2 has taken everything that I loved about the Aeronaut and made it even better. The build I have in there right now is the build from Coil Wars a few weeks ago when we made the staggered staple quad core transformer, whatever it was. It was a 4-core staggered fuse clapped in transformer coil. Get it right, fool. And it performs beautifully in here, and positioning it into this RDA was a piece of cake. There it is, that's the box. I told you it was coming. I told you. Like nothing ever happened. Just sweep it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. The thing that makes the Aeronaut V2 so great is all the things that they kept the same from the Aeronaut V1, if you ask me. Even the packaging is still the same. I always liked the packaging for the original Aeronaut. I'm glad he hasn't changed it. Just that simple, almost mass-produced sort of look to it, where it almost looks like you can walk in and get it off of a store shelf. It's got an area where it's ready to hang from a store shelf like that, or like a little display. I always loved that look about it, just because it was simple and elegant and unpretentious, honestly. Inside the box, you're going to find your fully assembled Aeronaut, your alternate top cap, little blue screwdriver, and you get some extras like O-rings, screws, squonk pin, extra springs, blank tubes, clamps. Great set of extras here. Most importantly, what's remained unchanged about the Aeronaut in the 24mm version is the airflow system. The Aeronaut's airflow system is, in my eyes, what makes it such a special RDA. I love the deck, I love the well, I love that it doesn't leak, I love the look of it, I love all that. But the airflow system is what really sets it apart. The clamping system on the original Aeronaut was the first of its kind, and I loved it for that. And we'll circle back on that, but I believe it was the airflow system that made me fall in love with it to begin with. You might think that it was my favorite RDA because of the clamping system, and I love the Aeronaut because of its clamping system. I did. I love it because it's so easy to build on, and it's perfect for accommodating those single coil exotic builds. But the real reason that I love the Aeronaut is its airflow system. It's incredibly unique airflow system that has airflow coming from the bottom and airflow coming from the top, and it's completely leak-free. Completely leak-free. That's what I loved about the Aeronaut. As long as you don't over drip into this thing, it never leaks on you, ever. Vape away, turn it on its side, and it doesn't leak. I can choose just to have bottom airflow, or just to have top airflow, or to have both at the same time, and they're both coming down at the coil together like that, and I love that system. And now with the Aeronaut V2, that top airflow system is fully adjustable as well. Because now that top cap is a two-piece system that you can actually turn and cinch open and closed against that top airflow tube. And not only is the airflow now fully adjustable for both airflow tubes by adding that second piece of the top cap, he's included another top cap that allows you to use your own drip tips. Those changes alone make the Aeronaut a vast improvement over the V1. With the Aeronaut V1, that was all one solid piece top cap. With the Aeronaut V2, you've got a separate top cap that goes up over the top cap, and you use that to adjust the airflow on the top airflow tube. I love that. That's new. That's awesome. That's something that needed to be implemented and was. So now we've got adjustable airflow at the top and adjustable airflow at the bottom. What I like to do generally is open up bottom airflow, maybe just a little bit more than halfway, and the top airflow, I like to close it down so it's just a little bit more than halfway closed, just a touch. That's my favorite airflow on this RDA. Always has been. See, with the Aeronaut V1, what you had to do to adjust the airflow was to use separate tubes. You would use different tubes in the top airflow and use different tubes in the bottom airflow to completely customize the airflow experience. And he had this secondary set of airflow tubes that he put out. And you could use those on the top and you can mix and match them on the bottom, but the thing was that you couldn't use the bottom airflow tubes in the top and vice versa. They just weren't the same size. Now, with his new system and this 24mm diameter that he's given the Aeronaut V2, well, you can. In the Aeronaut V2, the 24mm version, the top tube and the bottom tube are now the same size. Both tubes are completely interchangeable. With the original version, you couldn't use the top tube in the bottom section. In the new version, you can, which is really awesome. And not only that, but because of the way the top cap is designed, he's given it an even more conical shape, which improves the flavor even more if you ask me. But consequentially, what it also allows you to do is use all of the old top airflow tubes. Although they're smaller than the new top airflow tube, they still fit in the top airflow section. It's a bit of a challenge to get those old top tubes into the top airflow. It's kind of tight. I think that the tubes are like just a touch skinnier than the original tubes. So it's a little bit of work to force them in there, but they do fit, they do come in, they do come out. It's a little bit of work to get them in there, but it's worth it if you have all those tubes already. I've got the double top airflow tube in here from the original expansion pack, and I've got the big default tube in the bottom, and it's just awesome. Wow. When Daniel came out with the Aeronaut V1, he had a special edition called the Lucid Edition. A very mirror sort of finish to it. That lucid mirror finish is now the standard. That's right, lucid finish on all the stainless steel Aeronauts right now. You can see yourself in this finish. It's just gorgeous. So already we've got an improved outer sort of shell to the Aeronaut V2 over the Aeronaut V1. We've got the capability of using our own drip tips, adjusting the top airflow system. We've got interchangeability with the top and the bottom airflow tubes, and we've still retained the compatibility for the original airflow tubes. So you've got even more flexibility for your airflow here than you did with the original. The deck is where we see even more improvements. The thing about the original Aeronaut deck was that the clamping system was the first of its kind. It was the first RDA to have that clamping system, and as far as I'm concerned, it was the best clamping system on the market until the Pharaoh came along. Pharaoh added those spring-loaded clamps and just blew it out of the water. But now, yeah, the Aeronaut V2 incorporated the spring-loaded clamps while keeping that same system with 2 screws in there used to secure your leads. The deck The deck has some vast improvements as well, mainly in that the clamps are much thicker now. They're about 2 or 3 times as thick as the original clamps. The original clamps had the potential to bend. Now, the way that I always got around that was by learning to tighten them down evenly. If I tightened down one clamp and then the other, and then one and then the other, and I did it completely even, I never had an issue with any bending. But now that the clamps are even thicker than they used to be, you don't have to worry about that anymore. They're about as thick as the Goon clamps now, and I've never had an issue with the Goon clamps bending. I love that the clamps are thicker now. With the original Aeronaut, the posts were directed right at each other. There was one here, there was one there. And the Aeronaut V2 offset them. So now they're kind of like this. You know, they're just offset, accommodating those leads even better for those single coil exotics. You can pretty much fit any single coil exotic in here as far as I'm concerned. 5, 6 wraps, all you need in a single coil exotic, and it's a perfect fit without having to bend the leads. With the original, you kind of had to bend the leads, so one was going one way, one was going the other. So you would build it and your coil kind of looked like that, like a little zigzag of leads going one way, leads going the other. Now you don't need to do that anymore. It just fits perfectly. And he's also optimized the deck for wicking. And he's made it sort of obvious as to which side your lead is supposed to go. I think that was a lot of the problems some people had with the original Aeronaut, was figuring out which side the lead is going to go into the post and which side is the wick going to drape down. For me, I always found that putting the wick on the opposite side of where the lead went into the post optimized the airflow, optimized the wicking inside the chamber, and everything worked perfectly when I did that. But this one makes it even more simple and obvious how you should use it, if you ask me. But my favorite change to the deck has to be the spring-loaded clamps. I love the spring-loaded clamps, and it's interesting the way that it's done. One screw is small and one screw is large, and the screw that's large has a spring on it. So as you're lifting up that spring, it's bringing the clamp up out of the deck completely. And since the other screw is kind of small, you can sort of swing it outward. That's kind of how I used to build the original Aeronaut. I would unscrew one side of the clamp and swing it out, and then leave the other one still in there, so it was anchoring it there, and I could put my coil in there and swing the clamp back into place. And this new deck system is optimized for that. Better yet, it sort of holds the clamp open for you while you're positioning your coil. It's very polite. It's like the Aeronaut V1 perfected, is what it is, if you ask me. I'm very excited about it. I've been excited about it since I heard it was coming my way, and I didn't read up too much about what was included. I kind of wanted to be surprised, and I'm very pleasantly surprised. I did not know about the spring-loaded clamps. I did not know about the offset sort of posts. I didn't know about the ability to use your own drip tips, or that the airflow tubes were now going to be completely interchangeable across the top and the bottom. I mean, it's basically checked every box for me. I mean, it's perfect. It's just awesome. All right, we get it. You love the damn thing. Can we build it now, please? So, I've showed you guys time and time again different builds that you can put in the Aeronaut. Pretty much anything that you can imagine as a single coil, you can put in the Aeronaut as a single coil exotic, running from one post to the other. In the Aeronaut V2, it's even more obvious how to build it. It's just optimized for the single coil exotic. But one thing that I never got to do with the V1 that I always wanted to do was show you guys a vertical build in the Aeronaut. I just never got around to it. And there's, the obvious way to do a vertical coil build. One lead goes into one of the posts, the coil coils on upward, and then the other lead sort of bends over, back down, and into, the other post. That's sort of the obvious way to do it. And that's not the way that I like doing it. I actually like to do a Swan Coil build. The Swan Coil was developed by Dex, an old school builder. And he's most well known for creating really, really intricate, very artistic sort of builds. But the Swan Coil was one of those builds that always struck me for its simplicity and its utilitarian purposes as well. It can be very useful for fitting a vertical coil into certain RDAs and certain RTAs. Sandvik basically owns the trademark on Kanthal, and they wanted to send me some of their wires so I could test it out and see how it compares. And I have to tell you, as far as Kanthal goes, it's pretty damn good wire. So I took a strand of 26 gauge about 3 times off the spool, folded it in half and twisted it, and then I did the same thing with 30 gauge, twisted it in the same direction, 3 strands off the spool. And then, bringing them together, I twisted them both together in the opposite direction. So what's happening there is the wire is getting sort of untwisted and twisted into each other and creating sort of a chain. It's kind of a cool effect when all is said and done. And then creating the swan is very, very simple. I found the middle of the strand, folded it in half, I wrapped from the fold around just like I was making a parallel coil, but I'm not. I'm actually making just a single coil build here. It looks like a parallel coil build, but it's only a single coil. Two ways that you can wick the Swan Coil. One is as a chimney coil. Now the Swan Coil, positioned in the Aeronaut in this fashion, wicked around the coil, creates what you call a chimney coil. It's a swan chimney coil, I guess. It's excellent for the flavor chasing. Excellent for the flavor chasing. I vape it kind of low. It ohms out about 0.4 ohms, and I vape it at about 60 watts. Delicious and still plenty cloudy. You can bump it up a little bit more, bump it up maybe 70 watts or so, but I wouldn't go too far beyond that with a 0.4 ohm build. Air is just passing up through that coil, wicked from the outside, collecting all the juice and the moisture and the flavor and the vapor and just delivering it perfectly. It's a delicious, delicious vape. And you have fully adjustable airflow on the bottom, so you can close it off, open it up as much as you like. I kind of like it all the way open, but halfway open, it's pretty good too. Very saturated vape, very, very thick flavor. Swans make for great chimney coils, but the Aeronaut RDA, you can also wick this same coil another way. So in addition to using the vertical Swan Coil as a chimney coil, you can also use it as just a regular vertical coil, one that you wick down through the coil and hit the coil from the sides with the airflow. Now the way that I do that is I put the blank tube in the bottom so that the airflow is completely cut off at the bottom airflow. Technically you don't really need the bottom airflow tube in there. You could actually just close it off completely at the bottom air without having the tube in there and you'd probably be fine, but I feel like it's just that extra layer of protection to avoid the RDA leaking at all, because, I mean, it always has that potential to leak, but, I mean, it really doesn't, which is awesome. But that just as that extra safety protection. So the airflow tube has been completely removed from the top airflow control here, and it's just working like a regular RDA would. You know, the airflow is coming in at the sides, hitting the coil on either side, and what I've got here is basically a well that goes all the way from that top airflow opening down to the bottom. That's how big this well has become now. It's basically like a giant tank in this sort of configuration where you just sort of drip endlessly on in there without worrying about leaking at all. Pretty awesome. Flavor that way is about average, but that's just one sort of chimney coil there. If I made it bigger, if I made it wider, if I maybe made it a dual coil, it would probably have even better flavor that way. It's like with any RDA, there's more than one way to build it, more than one way to skin a cat is what I'm getting at here. And the Aeronaut, if you ask me, just has more ways to build it than most. There's really not a wrong way to build this thing. It's just getting as flexible and as creative with it as you possibly want to. I gotta say, of those two methods, I kind of like the chimney coil a little bit better, to be honest with you. Just because I feel like I get more flavor out of it. But both of them are fun to play around with. And of course, there's building the Aeronaut, you know, with single coil exotics, which is the way that I like to build with it the most. But you've seen that from the Aeronaut. I've shown you that on the Aeronaut multiple times. I thought I'd show you something a little bit different with the Aeronaut V2. Anyway, till next time, I'm your homeboy Josh. Vape on, Vapers.